Welcome into Sportsmemo's betting podcast in the middle of March Madness. We're talking on Friday, March 22nd. We're going to talk the Saturday games mostly. Maybe a late night selection for tonight for some people watching this just after we're recording, but it is about 5:15 Eastern time on Friday. Wanted to get something out there for the listeners to bet on late night Friday action and Saturday's action. But without further ado, Robbie Veno, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, man?
I am doing good, Drew. How are you today? A little fatigued, but what the heck? It's time to go around the clock with these games. This first weekend's tremendous.
It really is, man. It's a lot on the body, a lot on the mind, but a lot of games going on, and there's money to be made, and there's a lot of fun in betting these games. So hopefully we can get more winners than losers. On tonight's card, I guess we can talk the 9:20 and after games. UCF, VCU, that one looks interesting. 8-9 matchup. We got Ohio State versus Iowa State as well, the 11-6, and St. Louis versus Virginia Tech. This Virginia Tech team laying 10.5 in this one. Any three of these games kind of tickle your fancy, Robbie?
Yeah, there's something of interest in all of them, right? For the two Virginia teams, they both have point guards returning to the lineup. We talked a little bit about it Monday. Maurice Evans for VCU is a go. We haven't seen much movement in the line. It's gone, opened at pick. UCF moved to 1 and has really held firmly there. A little bit of push in the total from 124.5 to 126, probably to be expected with the return of Evans in that case. It's Virginia Commonwealth, Drew. They're going to do what they do. They're going to go with the havoc style of play for 40 minutes. And, when you analyze it, a couple of things come to mind real quick. Can Taco Fall keep up in a 94-minute game? Will the pace get to be too much for him? But then as soon as you say that, you figure UCF has guard play, very talented and upper-class guard play that should be able to break the press a little bit like Rhode Island did in that A-10 tourney. Once they get the ball across half court, they can settle back into half-court offense and utilize Taco Fall. So interesting game there for sure. The other return, of course, big news with Virginia Tech. Monday morning or last Sunday night, we were on Monday with the return of Justin Robinson at point guard, leading three-point shooter, leading free throw shooter, point guard, the whole works for them. Certainly Virginia Tech, happy to have him back. Game really hasn't done much. 10.5 opener, some 10.5s out there, a couple of straight 10s. The game's really bounced back and forth between 10, 10.5 the entire 5 days here since we last spoke. And then, of course, Ohio State, Iowa State, a little bit of action on the Ohio State side. We see 6.5 down to 5.5. Even some 5s, Drew. Iowa State, a bit of a trendy pick, but you have to like the way Ohio State showed up in that Big Ten tournament when Caleb Wesson came back into the lineup. They were formidable, and Iowa State's a small team. They can be beat at the rim and in the paint, so it'll be interesting to see if Iowa State can create their style of pace, which would be up and down the floor, 94 feet, or if they fall into Ohio State's game plan, which is more drag it up the floor, place really good defense. Chris Holtmann, obviously a very good head coach for Ohio State, so it'll be a battle of wills in that one. Total 140 down to 139.5 in most spots, but we see a lot of 140 still too, so that goes to show you balanced action on the total in that game. People not really quite decisive on which way that game's going to be played.
Yeah, Robbie, I mean, it's a great night for betting basketball, Friday night. I know a lot of people out there listening probably just going to be ready to just watch the games and bet them, so thank you for breaking those down. And we got a Saturday slate here, the round of 32, with a bunch of good action, man. A lot of intriguing matchups. Want to say a coupon code here for the podcast. MAKEMONEY is the coupon code. That's MAKEMONEY. Make money for Robbie Veno or myself, Drew Martin's 3-day all access. Get you through the weekend here for just $29. This is, I believe, the cheapest coupon that we've done on the podcast. Make Money is the coupon code, and it is a $29 for 3-day all access. That's $40 off the retail price. So just $29 for the next 3 days of all access service for Robbie Veno or myself, Drew Martin. That coupon code is MAKEMONEY at checkout. Robbie, let's talk a couple games on Saturday. Maryland LSU. We got the Big Ten versus the SEC, a 6 versus a 3 matchup here. 12-10. This is the top of the card matchup, the first game off the slate in the round of 32. Total of 145. We're seeing the Bayou Bengals here for LSU minus 2.5. There are a couple minus 2s out there, so it's either 2 or 2.5 for LSU. 145 being the total. Robbie, how you looking to bet it?
Yeah, my power rating showed LSU 1.5, so that was in line with the opener. Obviously, as you said, Drew, money has carried this game to where it is now. I think a couple of things here. LSU gets by. They escape Yale. They don't cover, but they escape Yale. And the same for Maryland. Maryland's trailing Belmont by 6 with 6 minutes left. And, in those final 6 minutes, there were 3 plays. For anyone who watched that game, you'll remember a game where Maryland, off a miss, kind of almost punched the ball back up in the air and it went through the hoop for 2. And then a play where their big guy in the paint was trying to dribble backwards, fell over on his back, but somehow made a pass for a 3 that went down. There were some things there. Belmont missed 3 or 4 free throws during that stretch, and Belmont kind of collapsed. So both of these teams happy to escape and to get here. I think, the LSU size matches up real good with Bruno Fernando in this game, so I don't know that he can be anywhere near as dominant or as physical as he was yesterday versus Belmont. Maryland likely needs to shoot the ball a little bit better than they did when you get a look at the numbers. And the same for LSU. Drew, there was some trouble for some teams yesterday as far as shooting the basketball is concerned. But Maryland, 6 of 22 from 3. LSU, 4 of 17 from 3. And remember, LSU gets the win in that game. How about Yale missed 21 of 22 three-point attempts during a stretch in that game? Yale only 8 of 37 from 3 for 21.6%. So, both of these teams real happy to get out with their lives. I think LSU matches up real well here, though. Like I said, one of the main assets for Maryland is not only the defense that they play, which Belmont kind of shredded up yesterday, but also the size of Fernando, which is matching the point guard matchup. Anthony Cowan, certainly. I'd almost lean Tremont Waters in that matchup as well. Javonte Smart, we've talked about the ability of him to play during the whole investigation. So I think LSU does have some matchup advantages, probably why this game bumped up now to LSU minus 2.5. Inside that venue, real quick, we didn't see any trends yesterday, Drew, as far as favorites and dogs or overs and unders in Jacksonville. In that subset, in that regional yesterday, had the totals go 2-2, and we had the favorites and underdogs go 2-2.
Wow, Robbie. Okay, so do you have all of the venue stats throughout round 1 to this point?
I do.
Interesting. Should we go over that now or just as we're talking the games?
Well, I can give you the key ones as far as ATS numbers are concerned. In the Hartford region, which is the region where St. Mary's, Villanova, Old Dominion, Purdue, Murray State, Marquette, and Vermont, Florida State. Those 4 games were played in Hartford yesterday, but the totals were under in that region, 3-1. Some of it, obviously, due to the matchups. I mean, it makes sense that St. Mary's Nova would be a low-scoring game. It makes sense that Old Dominion Purdue would be a low-scoring game. There were some lousy shooting percentages at that venue, but they were 3-1 to the under. And also the other venue which really showed up totals-wise was Des Moines, where the overs were 3-1. And again, we had some disparities there because Minnesota is not normally a team that knocks down 11 threes to get the game to 162 points, but they did yesterday. Louisville also shot it pretty well. That could be a sign, Drew, when teams that don't necessarily shoot it well come to a venue and do shoot it well, it could be a sign that the arena itself, the sight lines and everything are good. So maybe something to look forward to in Des Moines tomorrow. Those two games where the totals were 3-1 and really some pretty high scoring games.
Yeah, okay, so interesting. Hartford 3-1 towards the under, and I believe you said Florida State was one of those teams, and Florida State went over the total, right, Robbie?
They were the one against Vermont. Yeah, hold on one sec, Drew, and I'll get that for you, because I think maybe late that number closed, because it goes against the closing line, of course, is what I have here. But FSU yesterday against Vermont winds up, they're the game that went over the total. St. Mary's Nova under, Old Dominion Purdue under, Marquette Murray State under, and then Florida State over.
Might be something there. No, thanks for that, Robbie. That stuff is really important, especially like on neutral courts as far as the over-unders go. I'm really interested in that. Let's talk another game here. We got Florida, Michigan, 122 to 123 being the total. Some opinion here on this total. -6.5 across the board. That's Michigan, the 2 seed, laying against the Florida Gators, the 10 seed that escaped Nevada. They looked like the stronger team for a large portion of the game, and then Nevada came storming back, man, and Florida didn't look like they belonged on the same court, but they held on. They did win. They were the tougher team. I'll give Florida that. It seemed like Nevada was the more talented team, Robbie, the more high-ceiling players. But Florida had some tough guys under the basket. They were pushing them around a little bit, especially in the beginning of the game. This will be an interesting game to see if Florida can hang with a number 2 seed Michigan team.
Yeah, and a team in Michigan, Drew, that's playing tremendous defense right now. Not that Florida is not. Both of these teams, that's their calling card. Florida, you talked about the game yesterday with Nevada, and they hold Nevada to 34.5% from the floor, 21% from 3. So they did their job. Nevada did some damage at the free throw line, making 18 free throws, but Florida returned the favor, 17 for them, and they shot a better percentage. So, that's the kind of game you'd expect. It's the kind of game both teams want to win. I just feel like Michigan has a better front line at this point in time than do the Florida Gators. Florida's so reliant upon the backcourt, and where Michigan can feed the ball down low and, legitimately expect to score down there. So right now, John Beilein's kind of a guy that, in my estimation, you don't really want to play against at tournament time. One of the better coaches, X's and O's wise, in the game. And the way Michigan closed the season, boy, if you just subtract, and Michigan State's been a thorn in their side all season long, no doubt about it. But in that Big Ten championship game, it looked like Michigan State had it. It looked like Michigan had it. Michigan State took it away. It's the same thing that happened to Michigan in the regular season second meeting with the Spartans. They had that game, got it taken away. They've played excellent defense down the stretch, and I just feel like they probably have a few more scoring options than does Florida. Last night against Montana, kind of a mismatch from start to finish. Wolverines out quickly, win that game rather easily, dominate in a lot of areas, including the free throw line. So, the total's there at 120 for a reason, Drew. It's going to be hard for these teams to make it to 60. But as I said earlier, I think that when you're dealing with a game in this point spread range, I'd prefer to have the team that has multiple scores or at least a couple more scoring options. And to me, that team is Michigan.
And Robbie, as we're talking right now, the Big Ten is 6-0 in the tournament. How much are you factoring that into each Big Ten team's games going forward, just singled out to that team?
I mean, generally speaking, Drew, I don't factor conference records into anything, but there might be something to it this year because on the reverse end of that, in tracking the Big East was the only conference that got every single one of their entrants into a tournament. All 10 of those teams are in or got in. Now they're almost all out. The Big East was horrific, has been horrific all the way through, beaten by big margins. Even if it's not the NCAA tournament, it's the other tournaments. For instance, you have a game the other night where Nebraska, with only 5.5 scholarship players on the floor, is able to defeat a Big East entrant. We'll see what Creighton can do tonight. But I bring that up only because it has swayed me, or it did sway me a little bit into making a couple of plays against Big East teams, number one being Seton Hall last night. So I think that maybe this year there could be a little something to it. The Big Ten has shown outstanding strength across the board. Minnesota takes out Louisville. Iowa wins today. Teams that really didn't attract money, Drew, and I think that's where you find it to be the most important, because Iowa was bet against. A lot of money came in on Cincinnati earlier, but Iowa wins that game. Money was towards Louisville early, then a little take back towards Minnesota late. I think that game closed 5.5, depending where you got it. So these were not teams people were looking to bet for the most part, and they did the job. It shows a real top-to-bottom strength of the Big Ten. We'll see what Wisconsin does with Oregon this afternoon. That game in play right now, but overall they've done well. I don't use it, though, back to your original question, as a motivating factor for the most part in something that I'll bet. The Big East I did fade last night, though. I think they've just been horrible.
Yeah, they absolutely have. You're right. And guys, the coupon code MAKEMONEY, 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 at checkout will give you 3-day all-access pass with Robbie Veno for just $29. That's $40 off the retail price at sportsmemo.com. That coupon code is MAKEMONEY for 3-day all-access with Robbie Veno or myself, Drew Martin, for just $29, $40 off the retail price. Let's talk a couple more games here. We got Murray State versus Florida State. The 12-5 did go down with Murray State beating Marquette and getting into the round of 32. Now they face an ACC opponent in Florida State. We know Florida State, I believe they are a top 10 team in the country in terms of length and height. They do play good defense, so this is going to be an interesting handicap with next level talent for Murray State against this Florida State defense. 144.5 the total, -5. That's the Knowles lane in this one, Robbie.
Yeah, and that's where my power ratings came out on this game, Drew. Florida State -5 on the neutral floor. Again, this game being played in Hartford. I think you have opposite ends of the spectrum here, Drew. And generally speaking, I look for things to come back to the mean. And when you look at the games yesterday, Murray State could not have played any better. Statistically, they were wonderful. Aesthetically, they were wonderful. Ja Morant is leading every highlight show you watched last night through this morning. That team goes 9 of 18 from three-point range, 50%, shoot over 53 from the field, and defeat Marquette in field goal percentage margin, which is always huge. They defeat Marquette by 17.1% in that particular category yesterday. Did everything right. Florida State basically did nothing right until the last, let's say, 7 minutes of that game, where they finally started to assert themselves. Vermont would not go away. Knocked down 16 threes. Not so sure that Murray State's going to walk in and knock down 16 threes again, but I'm also not so sure that FSU is going to shoot 38% from the floor and only 25% from three. The saving grace in that game, Drew, was that the size of Florida State and the depth of Florida State was so much, and you referred to their size earlier, that they go to the free throw line 37 times. And I know a lot of it, not a lot of it, but a portion of it is due to the fact that Vermont fouled late, right? But they go to the free throw line 37 times, and Vermont goes 13. That's plus 24 attempts on the free throw line. It turned into plus 24 on the scoreboard, kind of covered up for the 13 less threes that they made than Vermont. I think Florida State will shoot it better here. I think this team, Murray State, is more to the style that FSU wants to play. Vermont kind of put a cramp in their style yesterday with their preferred way to play the game. And you talked about Florida State being, extremely long. The depth is an issue too, and a lot of guys we've heard already talk about how Florida State will likely run a whole bunch of bodies at Ja Morant. Florida State's one of the few teams that's capable. They go about 10 deep in the rotation, where Leonard Hamilton doesn't have to worry about anybody he has on the floor. So we'll see. I'll say this too, Drew. Not from a fundamental angle, not from a technical angle, maybe a small situational angle here for Florida State, who could rally together as a team for the rest of this tournament. Because after the game yesterday, Phil Kofer, one of their players, his dad died, and extremely sad time for Phil Kofer, who didn't play in the game yesterday. We don't know if he'll play tomorrow yet or not, but basketball teams are like a brotherhood. When something like that happens, it brings everybody together. It could be a small situational factor throughout the rest of this tournament. We know that college teams really, not that you need any more motivation at this time of year, but they really like to have something extra to play for. And for Phil Kofer, that might be it for Florida State tomorrow. We'll see. Certainly Murray State has a bullseye on their back now. They're not coming in under the radar for the rest of this tournament.
Robbie, let's move down the line here, try to get one more game in. The late night action, 9:40 Eastern tip, Auburn versus Kansas. We got War Eagle laying 2, 147.5 the total.
Yeah, were you hanging on by a thread yesterday, Drew?
Oh, man, I'll tell you, that New Mexico State team, they were good, man. I didn't think that they'd be that athletic and that good compared to Auburn. I almost think that, they had almost more athletes than Auburn did, and they played very well. Auburn almost gave it to them, too, at the end there. But, yeah, I was holding on by a thread, and it's always nice to have your team advance to the round of 32, and it'd even be nicer to have them go to the Sweet 16. But they're up against it here with a good Big 12 team, Robbie.
And for the most part, Auburn played good yesterday. They really did. It wasn't until the end when some of those, the fouls, especially the foul that Harper took to get himself fouled out at the end of the game. Bruce Pearl was going absolutely ballistic on the bench with the stuff that he was watching his team do.
He's fun to watch, Robbie, on the sideline.
He is animated, that's for sure. But it just goes to show you, Drew, you can only coach so much. And then the kids have to execute, and Auburn looked as if they had never seen a press in their lives. And it's kind of strange considering the amount of ball handlers that they have. That's an asset for this team. They'd better be ready tomorrow because Bill Self and his rundown team, they've lost guys to injury and personal issues throughout the season, and they're not dealing with a full deck. But, boy, they looked good yesterday against Northeastern, blew them out from start to finish. I'll give you a couple of quick stats here from yesterday's games. If these hold true, if this one holds true, Auburn could be in trouble. KU out-rebounds Northeastern 45-27 yesterday, plus 18 on the boards for the Jayhawks. Auburn got out-rebounded, which is not necessarily a strange thing, but they got out-rebounded big by New Mexico State, 39-24. I don't think those numbers will hold up in this contest because I don't think Kansas brings the same amount of size that New Mexico State brought to the table yesterday, but it is something to watch out for. The total opened 147.5. Tells you all you need to know that both of these teams want to get up and down. Bill Self has gone to that style for the better part of half a season now, due to necessity. Guard-oriented game, Drew. We'll see how it turns out. The big guy in the middle for Auburn, Wiley, will have his hands full with KU, and they're attacking the rim style. But I tell you what, boy, Auburn just scores in bunches. They have shot threes really, really well now for the better part of the last 5 games, and they stuck, I think it was 12 more yesterday. Boy, they hit them like that. It's going to be a pretty fun game to watch up and down. I think Auburn's the better team because they have more players right now than Kansas does. But, boy, Bill Self had them ready. So Bruce Pearl, has to have his bunch ready to go here. Like I say, Self did an excellent job coaching yesterday. Northeastern's a veteran team and a good team, and a team that people thought could actually have a shot at Kansas yesterday. Just look at the money that came in on Northeastern, and they were never really in that contest. So kudos to Kansas yesterday. And with only a day to prepare, Drew, some of these matchups tomorrow become a little bit difficult for teams. I don't know that this is one of them because both of these teams play the exact same way. They face that style in practice. So I think this is one matchup where only having one day off to get ready and prep for a team probably doesn't bother either side.
Yeah, and that Auburn-New Mexico State game was a game you won on the over of 143.5. Check out Rob Veno's plays at sportsmemo.com. He's got a bunch up. He's coming in with a bunch on tomorrow's card as well. He's got his 5% college basketball NCAA tournament blue chip up right now for late night action on Friday. He'll also have top plays up for Saturday as well. That's at sportsmemo.com. And you can use the coupon code MAKEMONEY at checkout for his 3-day all-access pass for just $29. Robbie, anything else you want to get off your chest before we head into this round two?
Well, you just have to take a deep breath between the hours. On the Eastern time zone, Drew, I think it's from about 6:15 to 7:05. We get a little bit of a breather, and then it's right back at it for the night session. So, hey, good luck to everybody out there this weekend. Don't forget about the AAF. I haven't football this weekend as well, and NBA's been superb as well. So we'll try to grab another NBA winner or two over the course of the weekend.
All right, Robbie. Thanks for the time. And, guys, best of luck with your bets this weekend. We'll be talking on Monday.